Yo! What's happening, team? How we traveling? We are question number something or other with some cool questions from the crew. I thought I would kick it off here with what's your opinion on protein supplements? I've been paying for stuff for years, but on average 25 grams per serve. I can only have I can have a few glasses of milk at 8 grams per day. Considering that I take my normal diet, hardly seems like it's worth the money. Cool. Now, protein supplements and all the other supplements. I strongly believe that we should be getting most of our stuff from food where possible, and then the only time we would have requirement for something like a protein powder or something would be out of necessity, because you can't get the time for the food. Pretty much is how I would normally run it for myself, and encourage other people to do the same. Obviously, I work closely with Amy Cox Target Nutrition, so anyone with food advice, I always send them down that path. Absolutely. But best example would be, I can use my own experience. I start quite early for work in the morning, and I cannot be bothered to make a sit-down breakfast. I like to eat out of convenience, so that is where a shake comes in super handy for me. Nice brekkie shake for me is protein powder, oats, fruit, yogurt, maybe a little bit of honey, and that works a treat. So I can just smash that on my way to work, and then make my first meal a whole foods meal after that. And the only other time I'd be having another protein shake a day, again, maybe something like a post-training option, when I'm a little bit time poor to get to my food when it's time to eat. But essentially, mate, I couldn't agree more. It does seem like it can quite easily be a waste of money buying a lot of protein. Just use it when you need it. The rest of the time, yeah, try and get it out of your food, and you'd be quite surprised with what you eat through the day. You probably get a pretty good protein requirement for today. Oh, can you talk about the process when training pregnant clients? Can they still compete in lifting? What is the main things to track during pregnancy? We'll take it one by one. Can you talk about the process of training clients when they're pregnant? Process number one, got to tell the coach. It's always super cute, because normally with pregnancy, as everyone knows, nobody knows about it until that usual 8-12 week kind of scan before they start making things public with people outside of their circle. However, good old coach gets to find out always early in the piece, because I need to be careful how I train you once you're pregnant. So it's always cool, always hard to keep that secret. Always had a bit of a giggle when Shelley, one of our cool clients in here, she was pregnant at the same time my partner Jaylee was pregnant, and Shelley has come in to tell me she's pregnant. The whole time I'm just biting my tongue before I can tell her our amazing news as well. So rule number one is you need to tell your coach. Rule number two, another good thing to do would be, even if you wanted to consider, would be to even include to tell me, to let me know that you are trying. Is always handy too. Why? Just so I can always keep that in the back of my mind, with training as well. Can you compete? Absolutely. You can do in its simplest words. Now, first off, obviously, I am not a medical doctor, so I am just a coach with a lot of experience training pregnant girls. I usually have one per year. I've been doing this for 13 years. I've lost count of how many I've trained through it. Now, so can you still compete? Generally, the rule is you can do anything you've already done before you were pregnant. That's a pretty typical rule. Can you compete like an absolute lunatic and max your shit out? My opinion is no. For those that were pregnant and still wanting to lift at a comp, I just say you focus on having a competition experience, and we always keep things relatively conservative for the day. We're not redlining or maxing anything out. Your last lift should almost look like an opener, in my opinion, or a very, very easy second. From a training perspective, and that would be a very quick version to explain what the training looks like for when pregnant. We are just conservative in everything we do. It might sound like a pretty funny one, but your body will tell us what you can and cannot do for training. Every girl that I've trained over their journey has been very different in what their body is okay with doing. Um, One of the ones that I usually find the biggest challenge being, particularly towards the end, is that bump just gets in the way of things. So we modify to make sure that that's not in the way for you. So Things like a conventional deadlift usually get quite tricky. A full depth squat gets quite tricky as well. Lying down on a bench, lying down flat for too long is never a good thing anyway, so that usually gets pretty tricky as well. But there's plenty of workarounds with box squats, sumo lifting, and working more of an incline press. Anything I track during the pregnancy, mate, I'm just always checking in to see how you're feeling and how you're going and how your energy levels are. Being mindful that the priority for you is to grow a little human inside you, not your squat, bench, or deadlift. However, making that secondary for everything that you're doing. So, usually we'll find, in my experience, some weeks will be great weeks and we'll be able to push a bit more and get a little bit more out of your training, and then other weeks you'll find you're pretty flat and pretty tired. It's more about just coming in and keeping moving. Every chick that I've trained through their pregnancy has always had amazing pregnancy and birthing experience, and they are always bounce back super quick. Jaylee can use her experience. She was back in the gym within 2 weeks after pregnancy, and now for anyone who's like, holy shit, that's crazy, we did work with Paul from start training to get the green light and work on anything that needed to be addressed through the early stages of her training. Now, here's a good one. How do you keep your training programs varied all the time? What is the mental process you go through with a program? I love it, the different ways I love how different it always is, but always works. Well, I guess basically I have a pretty similar peaking strategy that doesn't change. So in the back end of the program, regardless of what exercises I progress through it, I have a pretty typical peaking strategy I like to do. Something that I've just developed over years, and how I do it. And then individually, I know, get a feel for who can kind of push a little bit harder and handle a little bit more work, and those that can't, don't. Um, that would be how I get, I guess, that similar result. The variability, what I like to do is I follow a lot of cool coaches and have the opportunity to chat to lots. I keep a little record of all the cool shit that I see and the stuff I would like to add into programs or program templates that I use. And I have a little cheat sheet. A good example of what I do, let's call a nationals prep. So we're now sort of 6 or 8 weeks out from nationals, so that, let's call it, template for nationals. I start thinking about it and creating it in my mind and on my phone in notes right now. So over the coming weeks, I start looking at it, putting it together in a spreadsheet, and then I will normally go back and come and look at it a few different times before I start mucking around with that template, for a nationals run, so to speak. The variability, that's something that I personally enjoy, and I think you guys do as well. I believe rule number one for training, it should be fun. So I enjoy making sure that I put things in there that are not just necessity stuff that needs to be doing, that can potentially be a bit sort of more boring, but there's things that are enjoyable and in there. And then again, getting to know you guys individually and the stuff you enjoy to do, I make sure that it's fun as well. And I think a very important part of it is when I deliver it to you guys, I deliver it with a swing in my step, and that I think it's fun and enjoyable. And more often than not, I've also usually tested some of the ideas out on myself already at some point, or some of the other crew within the gym, to see how things track and how work. Yeah, that's kind of how we do the programming, which is kind of fun. And you'll always see it always changes. I always save, let's call it, some of the templates that I do up, and I keep them tucked away, and I'm always revisiting and tweaking and changing and mucking around with them as well in the back end. And this would be a good opportunity for a little shout out to Greer. She is the creator of the spreadsheet that we use. Thank you very much, Greer. And now a little training update for you guys. I know everyone's pumped and fired up for my own training, which is cool. I'm now 4 weeks out, 5 weeks out from GPC States. I've just got off this week, coming off my little deload, and the schedule was 240 for 3 singles, and I'd like to think I absolutely annihilated them, which is cool. As you know, I've talked about, I run a bit of a wave load, so I finished last block 250 for a 3. That said, to me, I sort of feel like I'll be sitting around a 270-ish squat at that point. So I start back to start the new wave, a little bit less than 250, 240. I see how that feels, how that goes, to decide what I do next week. And after a little liaising with Kevy and Brando about how those 240s move. Next week we'll go for a 262 singles, so I drop a rep and just do 2 singles. And then same strategy going into the last heavy session will be kind of like seeing how those 260s move as to dictate what I do the following week, with the overarching goal of not hitting any death grindy reps where I obliterate my CNS and my recovery, because I need to take it nice and easy. Now, crew, thanks for sending me the messages. Appreciate it. Keep coming up with some cool questions for them. Make them wacky, make them creative, make them thoughtful. Anything you see within the training programs or stuff you see on the internet, you got some questions about. And if I don't know the answer, I know some pretty smart people who will be able to help us out. Talk to you guys soon.